My task as a composer is to match the music on every map in the game with a particular region. First, I create a story. Prokhorovka. I see a Slavic region, a big Slavic field. I see a village with a small hut. An old man sits inside and plays his old violin. He's playing Kupalinka, a Belarusian folk song. And I hear his emotions in his playing. He misses his nearest and dearest who went to war. The village is occupied. An SOS signal is heard somewhere. In Morse code, a typewriter types, "We urgently need reinforcements." Battalions of soldiers march in, and tanks roll in to liberate the village. Then they move on to liberate other villages. And this old man watches them go and understands everything is going to be fine. And we end it with cellos. Cellos will play this phrase to the end. Let's keep it piano here. When this piece of music is ready, we create scores and go to Prague to record it with an orchestra. Only violins play here. We need to add some bass, at least a little, so that they don't sound bare. And it appears softly here. Of course, when an orchestra plays your piece, I imagined there would be such emotion. And there will be a lot of them. But I didn't have time to realize all this. You enjoy that sound just for the first 10 seconds. And then the work begins. You hear that this part should be played differently. It's better to switch these parts around, and so on. So the work evokes all these emotions. But even the guys that came with us shed a few tears. I understand why that is. Because an orchestra playing live, even if there are no microphones, it's just... There are pieces that are not fully orchestral. The orchestra here is just an accompaniment. For example, on the Mannerheim line map, the main part is ambient and uses sound effects, so the orchestra here serves as a backup. That's why a lot of time was spent to create electronic tones and pads that play the melodic line. And it's not fully evident, but it lingers on, it changes from one to another. That rocket flies, and at a certain moment, falls down and explodes. This will be the climax of the piece. When main melodic lines are recorded, when they are recorded with the orchestra, they are sent to me. So the core theme tune remains the same. But I add some electronic arpeggios and percussions to create a more modern sound for the track, and also emphasize the combat atmosphere. Let's try to enhance the low-frequency component with an electronic bass. With a filter. Sounds good. Now drums. And now let's support wind instruments. Good, now all at once. The global problem we had when creating battle music was its duration. We didn't know how long the climax of the battle would last. Our audio engine helped us find a solution. There are many containers in the engine where we put different variations of music parts. The engine structures them itself and chooses the playback sequence. That's why music can sound like this, or like this, or like this. The battle music needs to reflect the situation in the game. So we have a track for a winning team that sounds more cheerful, more relaxed. For the losing team that needs to mobilize and pull themselves together, we have more intense and dramatic music, so that players remain in suspense and try to carry the battle. The Mannerheim line is one of my favorite tracks in the game. When creating this track, I liked to experiment with symphonic instruments, add more electronic sounds to them, mix them with cold pads, and, of course, I liked to experiment with female vocals. There should be no words at the beginning, just whispering, just a hint. It sounds like a flight of a Valkyrie. The shamans are chanting spells, and at the climax, when the voice breaks out, it gives you shivers all over your body. We had a tricky task to create a kind of bird language that would sound like Finnish. As a linguist, I needed to immerse myself in its system to see how sounds are formed, what phonemes, diphthongs and durations were there, and to create a language that would sound exactly like Finnish but wouldn't have any semantic meaning. So it hits even harder. It gets more intense, and you can see by the curve that it gradually enhances the presence of the singers, gaining more and more power. They go together with the orchestra as if together with the conductor. And here's the climax, the loudest part. And there it goes. So what does a sound producer do? First of all, I start my mixing. But how do I start it? I imagine a stage and start arranging musicians there. For example, I take the violins and put them to the left where they are in real life. There are wind instruments a bit to the back and to the right. The vocalists are at the center, the solo violin too. Drums can be spread out in the background, and a violin to the left, yeah. Now it's to the right. I put it there, see? Center at the center. We get the surround sound of the violins. And the second step, I start balancing the volume levels. I put emphasis on some main instruments. For example, a solo violin. It's the main instrument, so it should be the loudest. So I bring it to the forefront. Next, I can put the string group, the drums will be even further, and so on. So the main task is to arrange all this beautiful sound together. And the sound producer or post-production mix engineer, it doesn't matter what they're called, they have a heavy load on them. The outcome depends on them, whether the track becomes worse or on the contrary it becomes better and underlines everything that its author has put into it. Recording the sound material doesn't mean anything. It's a set of sounds. And then we get all this beauty with the help of post-production.